Hi, that is Alvin from Dr. Wealth. Berkshire Hathaway just released their holdings as of third quarter 2022, and we saw that Berkshire have bought three new stocks and added into the portfolio. So the three of them are TSMC, Louisiana Pacific, Jefferies Financial. And of these three, TSMC is the largest position at $4.1 billion. And we think that this is a very unusual investment for Berkshire Hathaway, right? Especially from a Buffett point of view. And of course, we don't know whether this investment was done by Buffett himself or is it his deputies, Todd Combs or Ted Weschler. These two investors have been helping Buffett managing the portfolio for many, many years, and they never disclose, right, who actually made the decision to buy TSMC. But my view that is likely to be Buffett due to the size of the position at $4.1 billion compared to the other two new stocks. In addition, they are pretty small. And in terms of the position sizing in the portfolio, this is Berkshire's public investments. You can see that it is at the 11th place at 1.3% of the portfolio. So it's definitely at the upper half of the ranking in terms of weightage in the portfolio for TSMC. So it is a rather large, relatively large position. I would think that Buffett have a big hand in it. So why did Buffett buy TSMC? This is something that raised a lot of questions because we know that first of all, Buffett seldom buy outside of US in terms of their stock investment. You can even count how many times he did it. In 2008, he bought into BYD, and then after it was 2020 during the COVID period, he bought into 5 Japanese trading companies, and that's about it. And now suddenly he plowed in $4.1 billion into TSMC, a Taiwanese company. And we know that Buffett is very conservative and he will shun any risk that's out there. Anything that is unsure, he will try to avoid, right? Because that's the best way to prevent issues from cropping up in the future. And we know that TSMC have majority of its manufacturing done in Taiwan, and Taiwan is a geopolitically risky place to invest in due to the amount of tension that's culminating in it between China and US. As we can see, Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan, and the talks about China potentially attacking Taiwan due to the massive military drills that's conducted around the shores of Taiwan itself spoke a lot of investors, right? And yet Buffett went straight in and bought it during the height of tension because this was done in third quarter, which means it's really when Pelosi visited Taiwan. So this is very unusual of Buffett, right? Why did he buy it? And of course, I do have some take, and I do think that this TSMC does have the characteristics that Buffett is looking for. So first thing is that TSMC is definitely a market leader, and it has majority share in the global foundry market. Okay, it's a chip maker, right? So it makes majority of the chips in the world in terms of revenue, right? So it has 56% share, and the second place is Samsung at 13%. This is as of second quarter 2022. So we can see that it's far ahead, and not only that, in terms of technology, only TSMC and Samsung could do a 3 nanometer node in semiconductor processing manufacturing. So the smaller the node, the more transistors you can put inside a semiconductor itself. So only 2 companies can do that, and now they're even moving to 1 nanometer. And you can see the rest of the competitors are not even close. So you can say that TSMC has a lot of moats. Okay, that's what Warren Buffett is looking for, or in other words, competitive advantage. And TSMC is clearly the leader with a lot of distance away from the rest of the player, including Samsung, right? Technology, yes, Samsung is there, but in terms of the volume, Samsung is nowhere near TSMC at this point in time. So it is clearly a very moat-like kind of business. But I also want to add there is something else that Buffett look at. It's not just about moat, but how durable the moat is. So he usually avoid a lot of technology companies because he realized that technology companies come and go pretty fast. Due to innovation, they have to keep going. Technology cannot stay stagnant. So he don't really invest in technology stock for that reason, because their mode can be very temporary in nature. Give you maybe a few years, then another competitor come in with better technology, you're obsolete. So he feel that is a very risky game to play. So he prefers those have durable advantages that can last a long time. Decades and decades, right? So example is like you love Coca-Cola, right? And Coca-Cola doesn't need any innovation. It's the same old recipe for a century, and you don't need to change anything. You can just keep selling and selling and selling and still relevant today. So he liked those kind of durable competitive advantage. So now that comes back to TSMC. Why TSMC? Because we know that technology if you see from a lens from a technology perspective, you will know that TSMC will always need to invest in new technology. Now they're pushing to 1 nanometer, and God knows where they're going next. And it costs a lot of money because factories are very expensive to build. This kind of high-tech manufacturing costs a bomb, and it's still uncertain whether they can really reap a benefit out of it. So it is actually more temporary competitive advantage that we are talking about here, even with TSMC. So what did Buffett look into TSMC that he thinks that it is durable enough? So I think the answer goes beyond the technology. It's almost the same as why he bought Apple. He didn't buy Apple for the technology. He bought Apple because it was a very, very powerful consumer brand. And no matter what Apple churns out, the next model, people will queue up to buy, right? And in fact, sometimes you want to compare Apple product and say a Windows product or Android smartphone, the specs may not be as good actually, but the price point is definitely at a premium. It's because of the brand ability to charge at those prices. So if we look from that lens, then we can find an answer for TSMC as well. It does have durable moat. It has durable competitive advantage because it is a trusted brand. If you are someone who design the top chips in the world like Apple, you want to get it manufactured, you will go to TSMC. And essentially, there's really nobody else to give you that quality and the volume at the same time, because they have a track record. And second is that they have the organizational know-how, right? So technology might be easy to replicate by other competitors. Just buy the latest machine, just build more factories, adopt latest technology in your manufacturing process. Those can be done. But how do you package it everything together, right? To really produce things at high quality without compromising when quantity goes up? These are know-how, right? And track record that has proven that they can do it. So it is that part that is very difficult to replicate. So I do think that Buffett is looking more from that branding, more from the organizational know-how, the softer things rather than hard technology that we are talking about. So if you look at that, then we can really say that it's rather durable, right? It is really much harder to duplicate or replicate as compared to just buying latest lithography machines from ASML, okay, all this kind of thing. How do you put things together into a proper supply chain, right? So that is the know-how that we're talking about. So TSMC definitely has the edge. And with that news, when Buffett disclosed, or Berkshire Hathaway disclosed their position, TSMC jumped up 6% during the after trading hours. Okay, so Berkshire average price was at about $75.16. It closed at $72.80, but after market trading is at about 77. So likely when it opens, it should trade higher than what the price they bought. So there is some halo effect when it comes to this Buffett buying certain stocks. So do you think TSMC is a good buy despite all the geopolitical risks? Do you agree with Buffett? Give your comments below, like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.